welcome back to my channel. My name is Siobhan for anyone who's new, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to make your nose appear smaller through the use of makeup. And I'm going to show you how to contour using both cream and powder products, and I'll show you what I'm using as I go along. Now I'm not going to go into what different shades or different tones will suit everyone because it's too much to go into in this video. That would be a whole separate video. Basic rule of thumb would be to go for something a little bit more grey toned the paler you are, and then if you've more warmth and more depth to your skin, you can definitely go for a slightly warmer contour powder or contour cream depending on what you're going for, but never go like more than maybe 2 to 3 shades beyond your own skin tone, because then that is going into drag makeup category, which is very, very severe, and it's also very hard to work with. But I will say, when it comes to trying to decide where to contour on your nose, it obviously depends on what you want to minimize. So I will just zoom in for a little bit for this. Okay, so obviously for my own nose, even though I'm contoured now, but I have, you know, quite a wide nose here compared to here. Now, if my nose bridge was wider up here, my nose wouldn't seem so wide. It's just because of I have a very high nose bridge. I have actually a very high nose, but it is very, very narrow here, and then it comes out. So it's just in comparison from here to here, this seems very, very narrow and this seems very wide. So what I do, it's easier to make something look narrower than it is to make it look wider. So what I would do is contour here. Sometimes I will apply a bit more highlight either side of here, but because of natural shadows, you will still always have a little bit of shadow there, making it look its real width. So it's much easier for me to contour down here. Now, if it's a case of you have a much wider nose bridge and then it gets narrower at the tip, what you would do there is you would contour up here, and you would kind of fade your contour as you go down, and then you would highlight your nose tip to help balance them out. So it really does depend on what you want to minimize and what you want to highlight. So just look at your nose, whatever you think is too big looking, you know, making it kind of as basic as possible, that's what you want to contour. And if there's anything that you think is looking a little bit small, then you can definitely highlight that. And then when it comes to having a bump in your nose, there's nothing you can do about it from the side on. Now from front on, sometimes having a bump means that it'll come out in a little bump at the side. Mine isn't too obvious, but I do have to be careful when I am contouring down through my nose that I don't go with the shape of the bump, so I don't go around like this and down. I have to cut through it. So that's another thing you have to be aware of. My camera battery actually just died. Luckily I had a second one on hand. But what was I saying? Yeah, being aware of the bump in your nose. Anyhow, without further ado, I'm just going to jump ahead and show you how I contour using first cream product and then a powder product. I will be announcing the giveaway winner at the end of this video, who gets the tea for 2 at the G Hotel, which was the competition I was running in my blogger event vlog from last week. So keep tuned for that. And if you are new to my channel, feel free to subscribe to get my future videos into your subscriptions box, because God knows it's hard enough to get them even if you are a subscriber. But I think you can tick something as well in your preferences to make sure you get everything sent to your inbox. And give this video a thumbs up if you do enjoy this instructional kind of video, but just keep watching either way to see how it's done. So when contouring with a cream product, the most important thing is to make sure you do it obviously before you set your base with powder. And if you are doing it over your foundation, and if you have maybe a bit of concealer on your nose as well, just make sure that you don't have too much product on your face or on your nose before you start adding your cream, because what will happen is your cream will start mixing in with the overly laden product underneath, and it'll start to look muddy. So try and not have too much product on. Just blot down any excess, maybe even with clean tissue, before you apply it. Okay, so my favorite kind of way to apply it is initially with a stiff synthetic brush. I'm going to be using my Illamasqua Hollow cream pigment. I absolutely love this. Obviously the colour you choose will be dependent on your own skin type and your like skin colour and stuff like that. Not skin type, that doesn't really matter, your skin colour. So I'm going to use this guy, and this is a double-ended brush, by the way. This is from Blank Canvas Cosmetics, and it's the E40 this side and the E41 this side. So I'm going to use this to apply and this to blend out. You can also use your fingers as well. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, I am more concerned with having this end of my nose looking a little bit smaller, and then possibly this end up here at the bridge looking a little bit wider. I'll have to do that with highlighting. So with my cream pigment, what I'm going to do, you can probably see here in the center, that's a good way to start because I find them too narrow up here, too wide down here, but the middle is fine. So going from the middle, and make sure that the light source is straight on so that you have a pretty good notion of what your nose is actually like. I can see that it comes out a little bit bigger this side. You know, it's not something you want to be pointing out every day, but just for the purpose of contouring, you want to be quite aware of your shape. So starting from the middle of my nose, and that's kind of where I want the thinnest part to be. I don't really like the really thinly contoured nose, like the drag kind of contoured nose. That's not very natural. I'm going for a slightly more natural effect. So I'm cutting down through the kind of rounder end of the end of my nose. I'm going to do the same then on this side. And of course you want it to be as straight as possible. And then because I have a bump on my nose, which isn't very visible straight on, but from the side you can kind of see it there, I do have to be careful that I don't go with the curve at the bump. I need to kind of go down straight through it. So that's why you really need to be looking straight on. And you can see already there that's making my nose look narrow. And then you can absolutely do the tip of your nose as well, and then just kind of shade in the rounder part that I'm trying to hide at the side. And one thing you can do if you want, of course, is continue it up towards the bridge of your nose, but I am under the danger there then of making this, you know, of highlighting the fact that this is narrow, which I don't really want to do. So what I'm going to do there is just whatever's left on the brush on the outside of that guideline, and then I'm flipping around to this side and blending that out. So it's really blending the product down into the side of my nose. And then when it comes to the, you know, the inside of the lines, just lightly bounce over it. You don't want to totally make them disappear, you just want to diffuse them a little bit. And I would be more than happy with that. Obviously when you're going out at night you can do it a little bit stronger because you're dealing with low light settings, so the natural daylight will show off everything much more obviously. That's why you're, you know, careful to make it nice and natural. And that's as much as I would do with the cream. So to set this with powder, and you do want to set it with powder, make sure you set it with a translucent powder just so that you don't totally cover the work and so that it's like still kind of visible that you have contoured. So I'm going to be using my NARS translucent crystal powder and very lightly pressing that over the nose. And always make sure you bounce it, don't wipe. You don't want to move any of that cream product because cream product is so movable, it's so pliable. And that's how it looks now set with the translucent powder, but I'm going to jump ahead and show you how I would do it with a actual powder now, a contour powder. So I will say the benefit of contouring with a cream product is that it's quite natural. You know, there's no obvious lines or noticeable shadow on my nose, and like very noticeable. And if you do make a mistake, you can easily just wipe it away, go over, you know, clean up with a little bit of concealer again if you need to and all that. Because you haven't set it with powder, you have much more control over cleanup and stuff like that. So again, use whatever colour suits yourself. For me it is the kind of grey toned browns, and this is my very loved NYX Taupe Blush. So when I use a powder product on my nose, I tend to just apply it with a blending brush. Now of course you could apply it with more of a paddle style brush and do your lines, but I think it can look very obvious with some powders particularly. And it can be a little bit harder to blend out, so I think it's better to just lightly build it up, and I don't like it to be so like linear. Like I said, it's easier to blend out a cream than it is with a powder. So this is my Zoeva Soft Definer Brush 227, and I'm going to swirl the tip of my brush into my powder. Always tap off excess when you're dealing with powder, and then it would be the same idea as in the same placement. So the placement depends on what you guys want to make look smaller. For me, of course, it's the tip of my nose. So again, I'm going to be starting roughly at the center, and then I start just cutting it down through the fat tip. And definitely the one thing you should really keep in mind when it comes to powder is it's much easier to add on than it is to take away. So just slightly, very lightly build it up. And if you're unsure, if you say there's two powders you're kind of trying to decide between, always go for the lighter powder. So it'll just make life easier on yourself. You could always go over with a little bit of the darker powder if you decided it wasn't dark enough, but always start with the lighter powder. Again, just lightly bring that down the sides of the nose, so you can see straight away this is much more obvious. Be careful around my bump, and then I could bring it up. If I am bringing this up around the sides of my eyes, I just make sure I don't go right in against where my natural shadows are, because I don't want to emphasize the fact that it is so narrow up there. So again, just very, very lightly. If you're wondering how far to bring it down to the side of the nose, just feather it down. Don't bring it down very, very far. You're not going to cover your whole nostrils. And then, because it is slightly more obvious, I wouldn't like to walk around like this because it feels like I am walking around with a dirty nose. I will go in with my powder. Now, I would often use a powder with a little bit more colour than this. So I would often use my Mineralized Skin Finish Natural by MAC because it has a little bit more coverage. It depends on how well I want to blend it out, but I will nearly always start off with, if I'm using this powder, I'll just see how I get on with this initially. And then just with the bigger brush, so a bigger brush, the reason I use a bigger brush and that it's nice and, what's the word, fluffy, is that it won't do too much damage to the contouring. It won't like push it around too much. It'll just diffuse it nice and lightly, which is what I want. And then by going up and down, you're just going to kind of keep it where you want it to keep, but help blend it out a little bit. And you can see there it's already softening a good bit. And then here is how it looks with the powder contour and my makeup totally finished and everything. So it's still relatively natural when you take into consideration like the contouring and stuff around the rest of my face. If I had only contoured my nose and not applied a little bit of shadow around the rest of my face, it would look a little bit odd because you would immediately notice that there's something else like more obvious going on here, but because of everything else it's balanced out a little bit. So I hope this really helps any of you guys who would like to make your nose appear a wee bit smaller just with the help of makeup. Like, I don't hate my nose, but I don't love the shape of it either, so I do like that I can adjust how it looks with the use of makeup, and it is something I would do most days because I just prefer how it looks when I do it. So as promised, anyhow, let me zoom out first. I'm going to let you know who the winner of the G Hotel Tea for Two giveaway was, and the winner is, I used random.org by the way to help me pick it. The winner is Sarah Smith, who is from Dublin, but she'd love to go there and treat her mum, which is lovely. So I'm going to be getting back to Sarah via YouTube, hopefully. Or obviously, Sarah, if you're watching this now, you can feel free to contact me from your YouTube channel to my inbox on YouTube, and that way I'll know it's you who's contacting me as well. So congratulations on winning the tea for two at the glorious G Hotel. So I hope this was helpful for everyone, and if anyone has any further questions or queries, feel free to leave them below in the comments and I'll try to get back to them as soon as possible. If you're new to my channel, make sure you subscribe. I do try to upload at least 3 times a week. And in the meantime, just take care and I'll see you all next time. So long, guys.